from the Strand in Manhattan Beach. It's just a beautiful sunset, but there's actually a darker implication of this beautiful sunset that we'll get to later. Terminology, a little bit of terminology. This is what scientists talk about. When we say climate, we say that's what you expect. When you have no other information, you go on past experience. Weather is what you get. And with satellites and supercomputers, we have a pretty good grasp of what weather's going to happen in the 5 to 10 day range now. Normal is the 30-year average. It's updated every 10 years on the zeros. So right now, what we call normal weather is actually the average of the temperatures that we experienced 1981 through 2010. At the end of this year, they'll be updated again for 1991 through 2020. The climate has warmed about 0.8 Celsius, almost 2 degrees Fahrenheit since 1850, above what would happen if we hadn't burned so much carbon. And but the rate of warming is accelerating. So it is very scary how much it's accelerating, and the warming is highly spatially variable. So I'm going to show you what has actually happened already. University of Alaska climatologist Brian Rettschneider thought that he decided to do the average of the decade early so 2010 through 2019. So it's only a 9-year average instead of a 10-year average. But then he subtracted that average. He subtracted the 1980s average from our most recent 9-year average. And you can see that we have a 4 degree Celsius warming in the areas where we get our water supply from, the Sierras and the Colorado River Basin. And let me zoom in on our local area. You can see that we have warmed up about 1 degree Celsius or 2 degrees Fahrenheit. And this is a 50-year trend in summer temperatures. So that was like an annual average. And if you're looking just at the summertime temperatures, you like me probably noticed that we never used to need air conditioning before. And now I'm seriously thinking about installing a heat pump because it is really too hot in my house. We can't count on our summertime breezes coming in the afternoons anymore. So this is our 50-year trend in summer temperatures. Part of the reason that we're warming up so much more than the average is because of these high pressure domes that are building up over the Southwest. They're building up more often and they're more persistent. Whereas before they might have lasted a day or two, they're now lasting like a week. This is all because of the polar ice caps melting. So this is our change in annual precipitation. A warmer atmosphere, you would expect more rain because the atmosphere will then use more, will soak up more water from the oceans, which are also warming up rapidly, and then it'll dump it over the land surface when it hits the mountains. But at the same time, plants are going to be thirstier, and so will the soil. So because of this high pressure dome, we're expecting less frequent rain and more intense rain when it does rain. And because the soil and the vegetation is going to be thirstier, we're going to experience less river flow. And we also have to remember that the wildlife, while it would be nice for us to have water and greener gardens, we really have to, wildlife, it's not like they give up something, it's they either die or they survive. So wildlife we're going to need more environmental flows. That means there's just going to be less water available to divert to agriculture and to the cities. So that was our picture of like water scarcity. Now I want to show you like what when you have too much water. With so much water in the atmosphere, we're going to get a lot more extreme precipitation events. And fortunately for us along the Southern California coast, we're only going to have slightly elevated risk. But in certain areas of like the Central Sierras, you see that bright, that dark brown spot there. We have seen like have you, we have seen like Reno, Nevada and Carson City under Washoe County, Nevada has had extreme rains and floods year after year. Like I think they've experienced it like 3 in the last 5 years. And then you also see parts of Texas too. It's a pretty scary thought having to prepare for this without having national funds directed at you. And then on the right, I'm showing the LA Harbor, and you'll see that with sea level rise, we're probably by the end of this century, we'll probably see like a meter of sea level rise. By the end of next century, we'll see about 55 inches of sea level rise. And right now, 40% of the US shipping container traffic goes through LA and Long Beach harbors, and they're going to be under 1 to 2 meters of water. So it's going to cost us a lot of money to protect those harbors and then to lift them up. And you'll notice that in the pictures there, you see some oil and gas storage tanks right behind there. Ships need fuel, so you have to have fueling infrastructure at the harbors, but you also have to protect them from sea level rise and storm surge. So that's going to be another expensive thing that we need to do. So when people talk about climate change mitigation and how expensive it is to move to a less carbon intensive way of life, you have to point out that doing nothing in the status quo is even more expensive than any of these mitigation factors. So as if that wasn't scary enough, the fact that we're going to have fewer rain events, particularly in the springtime and in the fall, that means that we're going to have a longer fire season. Our fire season is going to extend from 4 months out of the year. It's already like 8 months out of the year. It might even become year round in some places. So we noticed that in the smoke, but like, so we're going to have smoke much like probably any time of the year. And then even when we don't have visible smoke, we have kind of like this hazy stuff that is a PM 2.5 to PM 5. And that's what these sunsets are. If you look on the right, do you see how the particles are in very distinct bands? Each band is 1 day's worth of bathtub ring of air pollution that we injected into the atmosphere. So every day we inject pollution into the atmosphere, it hits like they call it a temperature inversion, which is kind of like a thermodynamic lid. And so every day we emit crud, it goes up in the atmosphere, it hits the lid, and then at night as it cools down, it comes back down, creates 1 bathtub ring. And each day we rinse and repeat. And that is like a week's worth of that's a week's worth of air pollution right there, because it was like a week since our last rainstorm. You're never going to look at a sunset quite the same way, are you, after I told you that?
No.
So climate change is really awful expensive, and what can we do about it? So I'm kind of a data-driven scientist, and I say, well, look at our greenhouse gas emissions. And you'll see that transportation accounts for 42% of LA County's greenhouse gas emissions. And then under industrial processes, that's like the refineries and stuff like that, and the stationary energy, that would be like power plants and industrial facilities too, that create their own power. So if car infrastructure, transportation infrastructure accounts for roughly half of our transportation emissions. And don't forget, like some of that manufacturing, buildings and construction, that's like to make concrete, that's to make cement for all of our freeways. So we have electric cars aren't going to save us, and also 100% clean energy for the electricity grid isn't going to save us. We have to tackle transportation and land use. There is no way that we're going to save the planet and save ourselves unless we tackle transportation and land use. So right now we have a geometry problem on our roads in that we give the most space on our roads to the least efficient way to move people around. Because for our economy to thrive, people need to get around. They need to go to market, and that market is both for goods and for their skills. So people need to get to work, people need to shop, people need to go to school. And if we want to help people and help the economy, we help people move around, not cars, not 5,000-pound hunks of metal and batteries. We help people move. So one lane can move about 600 to 1,600 vehicles per hour, but like you can move. And on average, they have like 1.1, 1.2 people in LA County in each car. So that's the least efficient way to move people. Having buses sit behind cars in mixed traffic lanes is a little bit better, but really not a huge gain. But that's the status quo right now. If we had an on-street bus lane, we could move like 8,000 people per hour. Up to 8,000 people per hour. But we say that we claim that we don't have space on the roads for a bus lane, which I think is really an extremely backwards way of looking at it. And also bicycles are about as space efficient as a dedicated bus lane. So, and when people say that, look at that bus lane, or look at that bike lane, it's like it's empty. Well, it can look empty to you because you don't see cars stuck in traffic there, but it's actually moving a lot of people through. And then if we can get people to live close enough to walk to work, sidewalks are an incredibly cheap and efficient way to move people around. And that's part of the rationale for these 15-minute neighborhoods and these transit-oriented developments. And then, of course, like subways and bus light rail, bus rapid transit are the most efficient, but they're not applicable to every neighborhood or arterial, whereas you could have a dedicated shared bus and bikeway on every arterial in the South Bay. And because I was talking to the North Redondo Beach Business Association, I know small businesses are really struggling, and we're undergoing the Artesia Aviation Corridor general plan update right now. But I wanted to go back and look at South Bay COG's own research on where customers for different neighborhood nodes come from. So if you look at the Artesia corridor, and then you see ovals for the people who live within a quarter mile of the commercial corridor and people who live within a half mile of the commercial corridor. You see that the Artesia corridor, people who live close to it provide 38.5% of the business by dollar value for the merchants along Artesia. So that's the highest. Artesia corridor has actually the highest local support of any business district in the South Bay. However, Artesia is only capturing roughly 1/4 of the trips, roughly 1/4 of the trips of the people who live in the corridor. So how is it that they're capturing such a small percentage of the trips, but they're capturing so much dollars from us? Well, it's because one, the Artesia corridor has pretty high density it has fairly high density. Like I live in the quarter mile zone and my census tract is 16,500 people per square mile living in mixed use, single family townhouses and condos and apartments. But it's a very pleasant, livable density, and it also supports local businesses very efficiently. Yeah. So like, don't be afraid. So I was trying to tell the merchants, don't be afraid about losing parking because your most valuable customers are not driving, they're walking there. And we're really—
that's what that number means, is that 38.5% of the business is coming from there, but it's not that much in terms of vehicle traffic because those people are walking or biking.
Most of us are walking.
Okay.
And also it has the highest drop off. It has the highest drop off between 1/4 to 1/2 mile. And they could fix that. If they had like a bus, if they had a bike lane and a bike lane and a scooter lane, then I would go, like right now from where I live near Ringe, I'll walk as far as like Phelan, right? But if I had a bike lane, I would go all the way to go all the way to the Galleria without getting in a car if you gave me a safe way to do it.
Do we have the data for like Manhattan Beach downtown or the Riviera or Hermosa Pier Avenue?
Yeah, I can give you the report.
I'm just, it would be interesting to compare Artesia with those other places so that, a lot of our, and also if Inglewood and El Segundo's Main Street, all of our areas, if we could really, look at all of that.
Yeah,
that would be interesting.
Yeah, so South Bay Code did this study a few years ago. It's on their website, and they're trying to do all the different commercial corridors, but this was like the first report that they did.
Yeah.
And you can see you can see table 4, the 6 areas that they did the first round, but it's very, very interesting because I live in the most local of the neighborhoods. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing because they need to know that the people that are walking and biking, the people that are walking there are their most valuable customers. And if you extended our reach by giving us a safe place to scooter or bike, then they would capture even more. I mean, just think if they were able to move my neighborhood from 26% to Riviera Villages like 46 or 40, or Old Torrance 47% trip capture rate, they could, like, that would be like doubling the money that they're capturing from their local residents, their local customers. So, I mean, you look at Old Town Torrance and they actually do not have as many they don't have as many residences near there, but they do have some large offices. And that's why in the North Redondo Beach business thing, they wanted to have more high quality, offices in the corridor. And that would make sense, that this would really help them capture more dollars, more spending from people that are already there and likely to walk there, or to have park at their office once. If you park at home or you park at your office, you park once and then you walk to the services in the commercial district. So anyway, so I looked at walkscore.com, and if you look at the South Bay, the Artesia corridor is one of the most walkable corridors in the South Bay. People don't think of it as a walkable corridor, but we actually are a 15-minute neighborhood. And that was one reason why Mark and I, when we rented here, we liked it so much, we decided to buy a townhouse here. And one of the reasons why Artesia is kind of unpleasant to walk along is because it's very hot, it's noisy, and the air is polluted. So one of the things that's within our control is that people are speeding along Artesia, and road noise increases with the speed and the vehicle size. So I actually went out there, I installed a noise meter app on my phone, and I went out on Artesia and I walked along and looked at what kind of vehicles are loud. And it turns out the loudest vehicles were not like the large delivery vehicles, because they go at a slower speed. The fastest, the loudest cars were like the pickup trucks and the SUVs that were speeding at like 40 miles per hour or whatever, because the so traffic noise is, one is the engine, two is the tire noise. And so the heavier a vehicle is, the more tire noise there is. And three is there is like the wind, the sound that's coming off of the impact, that is coming off the impact of the air against the vehicle, and taller, high profile vehicles are louder than like my Prius, which is like a short wedge on wheels. So the type of vehicles that people are buying and driving really are making the cities noisier. And we can change that by telling people, hey, drive a smaller car, drive the smallest car that will help you do the things that you need to do on a regular basis, and then rent that bigger car for the times that you need to haul something. And drive slower. Now, since Artesia is now under Redondo control instead of Caltrans control, the city has the ability to lower the speed limits because it's now under city control. And we also are no longer subject to the 85% rule. So if the city wants to make Artesia quieter, we can lower the speed limits. And also, like, even with electric vehicles, right, that's not going to save us from the air pollution, because tire dust is like the most prevalent microplastic in coastal waters. And it's also the tire and brake dust make up about half of PM 2.5 emissions. So even being an electric vehicle, you're still going to create brake and tire dust. And heavier electric vehicles, they do regenerative braking, so they have a little bit less tire dust than a comparable weight vehicle. But because they are heavier, they're going to have more tire dust. So it's really, it comes out in the wash. So, and we have to maintain our roads, and heavier vehicles are deadlier to pedestrians and bicyclists, and they destroy the road surfaces faster, because the amount that a vehicle deteriorates a road surface is it's exponential with the weight, and it goes and it goes up with the speed. So the faster, heavier vehicles really tear up the road surfaces and cost us more. Whereas it would take like 1,000 years, it would really take 1,000 years for a bicycle to do the same road damage to a lane that just one SUV going over a year on the same lane. That's just how much of a difference for cities that is, how much of a cost difference it is. So also so there were, in order to preserve on-street parking, they were talking about putting a bike lane that's in the door zone, on Artesia, which is something that as a bicycle rider just terrifies me, because I think we're going to see people killed doing that, when people in a parked car open a door, and then that kills people. And also squeezing people in a 4-foot strip of pavement that's like painted on the pavement with cars zooming by at 40 miles per hour who don't stay in their lane. That's like really terrifying. There was a lot of pushback about having a protected bike lane, which is like a concrete barrier that puts a concrete barrier between the bicycles and the speeding traffic. And I wanted to explain that that's actually a good thing, because right now the air on the sidewalks, and if the merchant has their door open, they get a lot of air pollution coming off of the road. And the more distance you put between the cars and your business, the quieter it's going to be. So I have a plot that I have some cartoons showing how the noise reduces with distance. And even if you put in like green barriers, like trees, it doesn't really do much to reduce the noise. Oh, and listen to that motorcycle outside. I did not pay someone to ride a noisy motorcycle just now down my street. But if you had like a wall, so if you had a wall or earthen berm, that would reduce, you create like a noise shadow at the sidewalk and at the stores. So having a half-height wall to protect bicyclists for a protected bike lane would make the sidewalks cleaner and quieter and cooler. And the reason why it would be cooler is because you wouldn't get that car exhaust being blown onto the side of the road.
Grace, this is not being recorded. Could you record it, please?
It's not being recorded?
Nope.
Oh, no.
It's live on YouTube, but it's not being recorded.
I think it'll be recorded on YouTube.
It will be recorded after I'm done. Then it takes a few minutes based on the length, and then it shows up, doesn't it?
Well, but mine says please request recording permission from the meeting host if you want to record. So
That's recording for the Zoom.
For the Zoom. And I think we would want to do both.
Right, just to be safe. Next time.
Well, yeah, learning.
Do I record to? Oh, record. Okay. So I'm going to record on this computer instead of record to the crowd. So it's not being recorded by Zoom, but it is being recorded by YouTube, I hope.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
But,
so like I've gone to all the Artesia meetings and it's always parking. And providing car parking is a big expense. And I was really surprised to go to the last city council meeting and discover that how large the parking requirements are, and how nothing is ever torn down and rebuilt because they're grandfathered in to lower parking requirements, and they'd have to double or triple their parking, which is already underutilized. So we really have to have parking reform. And one of the suggestions I threw out is that include bicycle and scooter parking as fulfilling the parking requirements, because you can fit like 10 bicycles in the parking of one car or 20 scooters. And I also would want us to put in bicycle racks that accommodate the type of bicycles or tricycles that are used by the disabled, that the recumbents and the tricycles used by the disabled, because they take a little bit more space than parking a regular bike. But it's necessary that we provide parking for disabled cyclists as well as disabled drivers. And remember that your cheapest customers, your most profitable customers, are pedestrians, because they don't use up any parking. But make it pleasant for them. Don't waste their goodwill. Give them a safe route from the sidewalk to your store. And remember that street space is limited. Parked cars don't spend money, people do. So reallocate that road space from car storage to people moving, because that's what streets are. They're supposed to be for moving people and serving the agora instead of somebody's extra car storage. And remember that South Bay Code did a survey quite recently, and they discovered 50% of South Bay trips are less than 1 mile, and 70% are less than 3 miles. So if we could move people to active transportation and make it pleasant and safe, then we don't have to provide as much parking. We will meet our our greenhouse gas emissions targets, and not only that, we will make our neighborhoods just a lot more pleasant, and it will be good business. And this is something that I showed in January, which is the LA parking crater. And you can see how we've had a steady requirements creep of how many parking spaces are required for every housing unit in LA County. And if you put it all, so like a single family home, it used to be like one parking spot was required before 1936. Then it was increased to 2. And then after 1960, it was increased to 3. If you, even for condominiums, they're requiring 2.5 parking spots. Like my townhouse, it requires 2.5 parking spots per townhouse. And this is really driving the cost of housing. This is part of the reason why housing has skyrocketed here, is we have to allocate so much land to storing cars, and storing cars is expensive if you have to build multi-level parking structures. If you have to build an underground parking structure and build 2 spots per condo, you could be adding $200,000 to the cost of that condo. Anyway, and this is Mike Chester has been doing excellent research in parking infrastructure and over time. And what he's showing over here in annual space additions is we keep adding parking spots. And like around 1980s, 1990s, people started complaining about how hard it was to find parking. That was because we slowed down our growth in adding parking spots. We also slowed down our growth in adding housing. But do you see how under cumulative spaces, you have the residential off-street, which is like the housing parking requirements. You have the non-residential off-street, that would be your offices and your shopping centers and stuff like that. But you see this on-street, do you see this gray bar? This is on-street. We didn't used to allow people to park cars on the street just about everywhere they wanted. We didn't used to allow parking on arterials at all. But once we did, we then had a geometry problem on our streets because we took away lanes of traffic in order to park cars. And then now we say that we can't go back and we can't take away the parking to put in a bike lane. I mean, this is just so mind-blowingly backwards. I don't even know what to say. I'm at a loss for words. But we cannot keep growing and growing in vehicles. It's killing us, and it's killing our cities, and it's killing our planet. So the World Economic Forum just met this last week, and they said like the future of cities was bicycles and buses. And this is another study in January said the same thing. It's like everyone who has studied this knows what the answer is. Answer is to move from less efficient ways of moving people around to more efficient ways of moving people around. That's more efficient in fuel, more efficient in road space. And remember, if we keep our dollars local, we strengthen our economies. And then over here, Costas Samaras is a professor that studies a clean energy transition at Carnegie Mellon. And he and I, we follow each other on Twitter, and we talk about e-bikes a lot. Like people talk about electric cars way more than e-bikes, and they have it backwards because like a Tesla has 85 kilowatt hours of batteries. My e-bike has half a kilowatt hour of batteries. So these lithium cobalt batteries are extremely expensive they're both expensive in terms of the dollar cost, but they're also expensive to the environment because the cobalt has to come from warm tropical places, and they're either hand mined like by slave labor in Congo, or they are strip mined in Papua New Guinea and northern Australia, where they would they would clear cut a tropical rainforest, and then they would strip mine for the cobalt. And each of these batteries is roughly 1% by weight cobalt. So this is extremely unsustainable. So yes, we're going to need batteries, but we should use the smallest battery that we can. And that's why I always push for e-bikes and e-scooters over electric cars if you can. And I know people keep saying that you can't expect everyone to ride a bicycle. What about children? What about mothers? And so my friend Kate sent me a photo of me because she says she's a Dutch mom. Look at her, isn't that cute? She's got her little electric tricycle with her 2 kids in, this is how she gets around in Holland. And on the lower left is a picture of, you know how we have the walking school bus in Redondo Beach? They actually have a rolling school bus where the kids bicycle to school together. And then on the top right is Olivia de Havilland riding around I think it was one of the movie lots. She even at 100 on the bottom, at the bottom right, can you see, even at 100, she's riding a Rayleigh tricycle. And actually my mom is trying to rehab her knee so that she's strong enough to ride one of these. My mom's 83 and she gave up her driver's license, but she really wants to get strong enough so she can get around on a tricycle. Because in Europe and in Asia, a lot of elderly people get around on tricycles, especially electric assisted tricycles. So that as the South Bay ages, having a safe network for both the young and the elderly to get around is going to be increasingly important. So in terms of the transportation, we want to make driving a car alone the last, not first resort that people think of. We want to reallocate road space. The low-hanging fruit is we use arterials for moving people instead of car storage. And like in an urban environment, you have enough people that you would want to have a separate bike lane and a separate bus lane like they do in the picture over here. But in the South Bay, we could probably get by with a shared bus and bike lane. And even if people have to drive, they should drive with the smallest, most efficient vehicle that they can. And we have to make it safe. That's the point of Vision Zero. If you say you want to adopt Vision Zero, you have to act like that's really your priority, not car parking, but not NIMBYs who do what, but they don't have any data to back that up. You have to Vision Zero like you really mean it, like people's lives are worth it. Oh, and I want to go back. Did you know over 40% of the people that are hit in a crosswalk are people in wheelchairs? We're not taking care of the most vulnerable people in our communities. And that is just really, really sad. So move fast.
That's where this intersects with.
Oh, that's where it intersects with what?
The livable cities
Mm-hmm.
that Harriet's been doing, because that's such a huge part, is getting everyone around safely.
Right, because we don't want people, social isolation is bad, and we want people to go out and live socially integrated lives.
Yeah.
So my takeaways are: you move fast with existing technology. The bikes, the scooters, those little golf cart, they're already here, and also electric wheelchairs, they're already here. And so if we had a low speed network that's on the arterials, we would be able to help people move around, and with very small batteries. So that's important. And the other thing is that we keep our economy strong by keeping our local customers local and our dollars local. And remember that every city that has installed bike lanes and has looked at sales tax receipts of the streets that got the bike lane treatment and the similar streets that did not get the bike lane treatment, bike lanes increase the traffic at stores. And so there's a 11%, there's like an 11% increase in sales tax receipts on streets that got the bike lane treatment. And I know that a lot of people were afraid in North Redondo of losing car parking along on the arterial. And they said, can't we move the bicycles to Matthews and Vanderbilt? And yeah, you could do that. And that might be good for like school children getting to school. But you remember Matthews has a 13% grade when you get west of Blossom. Between Blossom and Aviation, that is just too steep for a bike lane. A bike route is supposed to have like no more than a 3 or 4% grade. And Artesia has a 3% grade along the same from Blossom to Aviation. But if you move people on Matthews, it's a 13% grade. So you can't do that. And two, if you move your customers on bike and scooter off of the arterial to a residential street, one, you're not activating the corridor, and two, you've just moved your customers a block away from you, right? So how are they supposed to discover a new store or restaurant that they're interested in if they're on the parallel street instead of on the arterial? So people, not cars, bring our customers. So, and then people are working at home, so they're walking more, especially at midday. They take a break from work, and so give them a chance to walk around the neighborhood, find a place to eat, and find a store to shop at. And doing these things isn't going to be any more expensive than dealing with climate change. And we're going to end up with cleaner air and water. We're going to have better mobility around, like I can bike around just as fast as I can drive around in the South Bay. And not only that, if you count the time spent looking for parking, at some places it's faster. Unfortunately, because in Artesia Corridor, we don't have very many bike racks, that's not very helpful for me. But like right now my husband and I do date night in downtown Manhattan Beach because they have bike racks, and it's hard to park in downtown Manhattan Beach, but because we can bike there and we can do it we can bike and park in 15 minutes to Manhattan Beach. That's where we're going for date night. But if you made Artesia a nice corridor to bike around, I will be spending date night more local. So none of that, will have safer, quieter, and cooler streets, because all of those cars create a lot of heat, not just in the engines. Internal combustion engines have a lot of waste heat, but just the cars, the friction of the tires also create waste heat. And remember that we're in the middle of a pandemic. The PM 2.5 that is shed from cars, remember PM 2.5, the biggest creators of these small particles are cars. They just shed this stuff all over. And that's making people more susceptible to catching COVID and more likely to die once they catch COVID. That's been confirmed over and over and over again in worldwide studies. So further reading, these are my data sources, and then these are my sources of local data. So if you would like to talk to me some more, you can reach me at my email, gspeng.ls